For the last several days, Bungie has been bearing the brunt of the backlash for the Marathon art theft allegations, and rightfully so. In my opinion, the entire aesthetic of the game is clearly inspired by the artist Anti-Real, to the point I can't see it without seeing Anti-Real's influence. And Bungie is going to need to contend with the fact that their studio has now been given the nickname Art Raiders, making the outlook grim for their extraction shooter. Beyond that story, I started digging into Bungie a bit more after public statements were made from former employees. I reported on these yesterday as they described a work environment tainted by toxic management. Today, after speaking with a handful of ex-employees, the picture painted wasn't much brighter. One person said, "The solution lies in holding leadership accountable." Another ex-employee said, "I hope they get consolidated into Sony. That's the path forward." Since 2023, Bungie has reduced their headcount by roughly 320 employees, and that number doesn't include the 155 roles that were integrated into Sony or the departures of senior staff who I'm guessing were given a payday as they exited the company. The internal picture painted was one of a cool kids club where you were either agreeing with leadership's vision or you were put on a list, berated publicly, and told your ideas didn't matter. If they didn't think of it, it wasn't worth doing, one ex-employee told me. Another claimed leaders were toxic and shut down creatives on a core level, which corroborated the unfortunate story we heard yesterday. The kind of ideas that I'm being told leadership pitched aren't surprising, but are concerning as a longtime player and fan of Bungie. In one meeting, adding a subscription to Destiny was brought up only to be vehemently shut down by staff. Another former employee claimed there was a concern about Trials of Osiris PvP armor being too attractive with its glow effect. The worry was that it was too good and would impact Eververse sales. The Eververse, for those who don't know, is the store where you convert real money into silver and then purchase in-game cosmetics. Another ex-employee also recounted a meeting where staff was given a huge monetization scolding. Everything happening to Bungie is because of greed, another employee said. Clearly, the state of Destiny 2, and therefore Bungie, was and still is at a critical point in their history. Rumors continue to swirl since this turmoil began in 2023. Claims swirling like the rumor that leaders were given multi-million-dollar penthouses to use as crash pads, something many former employees believed Bungie was footing the bill for. And if that was the story being told internally, it's easy to see why a lack of competitive pay, cut corners, and needed positions never being filled led to many seeking new employment. Bungie's problems stem from a lack of player empathy, disconnected leadership, and a corporate-first culture, one former employee said. Thankfully, when pressed to talk about the positive impact, some names did come up. I do want to specify that I can thankfully say Jason Jones, for example, was one person I inquired about, and sources told me he wasn't around much, but on sabbatical for personal reasons. In addition, many felt Eric Osborne was a great leader who got a bad ending. Luis Villegas was also described as being well-liked, and Joe Blackburn, who left last year, cared like nobody else. But in addition to the good, I was told about the bad, and unprompted and universally, HR was highlighted as a major problem. Each person I spoke with expressed anger at a specific individual who has since left the company. Ex-employees claimed that HR was working in their own interest, and there were accusations that issues of harassment were being covered up so that HR could get a multi-million-dollar exit. To give you some context about just how much that Sony deal was worth to employees, we can glean a bit from the Christopher Barrett lawsuit against Bungie. There, we can see that he was set to make $84 million. Due to the status of the HR person in question, that number wasn't 84 million, but one employee estimated they were due around $5 million. Former staff described being closely monitored on social media, not just for commenting about layoffs or company issues, but also for things as simple as promoting the work they had done at Bungie. If you did speak out publicly about either a personal issue or you promoted your own work, you could expect an email as soon as 15 minutes later to hit your inbox, one person claimed. Employees were warned against promoting themselves publicly, one ex-employee said. And as for the legacy issues, one guessed, the problems have just shifted to Marathon instead. Ironically, the one thing that helped the situation was Marathon, mostly because leaders who were difficult to work with at Bungie were moved to work on Marathon. But that also meant other employees, such as those from the Sony side, with little or no game development experience, took that place. And all of this has caused structural issues that severely undermine the studio's culture, decision-making, and the final product. Games weren't games anymore, they were products. Players weren't players anymore, they were customers. And that subtle tonal shift was felt. Now, we've all seen the fallout from the Sony Bungie deal and Bungie's 45% revenue miss. A miss like that means developer jobs and cut corners, but even the former employees feel like a lot of us do. They just want to see Bungie do better. One former employee said, "It makes me sad to know there are so many talented people that can make great things, but are still answering to management that can't stop shooting themselves in the foot. They make bad decision after bad decision. It's not even surprising when a news story breaks." Another lamented, "I just want the devs to be okay." I tweeted this publicly a few years back, and I'm saying this is my personal take on the whole situation. The buck stops with leadership, and that leader is CEO Pete Parsons. After hearing this, I stand by my statement made in frustration that said it's clear Bungie can't succeed with him at the helm. And every time we hear a new story, that becomes even more clear. I know a lot of people at Bungie, and I agree that I want them to be okay. But something quite clearly needs to change. Sony knows this. Bungie knows this. I think we all know this too. And at this point, that change is either going to happen or Bungie as we know it is done. Maybe it already is. Originally, this all kicked off because of an art plagiarism scandal, and I wanted to provide an update. The Reed Southern allegation involved the leaked concept for Destiny that used his work. He said, "I was never contacted by anyone at Bungie over it. It's been 13 years, so my memory is a bit fuzzy, but I've been led to believe that it was outside marketing or a contractor or something doing internal pitch work. It was a leak, so it's likely it was never meant to see the light of day, whether it was Bungie's work or a contractor's, but I've never been given an official explanation." Tofu Bunny was all about the Nerf gun that lifted their concept. I can't go into specifics, but I can say that we did reach an agreement I was happy with. Hasbro took responsibility for the situation. Bungie acted as a contact to put me in touch with them. I have nothing but positive things to say about the Hasbro team and all the community managers that talked to me. They contacted me the day after my initial tweet and worked to resolve the situation quickly. They handled everything smoothly and were very polite, respectful, and apologetic. Tofu didn't think this case was comparable to the Marathon situation. They said, "In my case, it was one design being lifted for the product. Well, in the Marathon case, an artist's entire visual identity is being ripped off and widely used to establish a massive part of the game's style. This is much bigger and much worse." Julian Fayola, whose depiction of the witness was used in a cutscene, said, "Yes, it has been resolved. I guess I'm satisfied with the outcome and the amount paid, which is significant for just one piece that was used." Relay 314's case has been discussed publicly. Bungie did credit him for his work. Cosmo said, "We have reached out to them and got permission to use their work and are now crediting them for this awesome community depiction of Xivu Arath." Relay responded saying, "Thanks so much for reaching out to me over the weekend and being an absolute gem of a community manager, Cosmo." And Anti-Real, the most recent case, I have not yet received comment from, but she told Gene Park at the Washington Post that the response this time has been overwhelmingly understanding, and I'm extremely thankful for the support. All in all, this whole story is really unfortunate, and I hope Bungie does figure out what's going on at their company, but things aren't looking great right now. If you are one of the people who spoke to me anonymously, thank you. And if you have a story to share about this or another situation, my DMs are open. And of course, you can always reach me at thedestinchannel@gmail.com. If you watched this far, thank you. Please consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting that bell to know when my content goes live. I do greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much to the members who support me doing work like this. If you want to support, you can do so at patreon.com/SaveStatePlus, here on YouTube by becoming a member. And a big thank you to Christopher Eddy, Phil Aroni, Spingetter, and Aries EMS. I appreciate your support. Before I go, you can check out my other videos on this topic, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.